Hi everyone, welcome to This Academic Life, episode 89. My name is Lucy Zhang, one of your hosts today. I'm joined by my good friend and our other podcaster, Pania Newell.
Hi everyone.
All right, so many of you are aware of the rapid shifts in academia over the past few months, driven by recent changes from several funding agencies. Given this evolving landscape, it seems only fitting to first explore the various funding resources available for academic research before discussing the implications of these changes and their impact. In 2024, NSF issued an info brief, which is NSF 24-332 report, titled Analysis of Federal Funding for Research and Development in 2022, Basic Research. It provides insights into the shifting landscape of basic research funding in the United States. Just kind of briefly recap of what's been going on for the last 5 or 6 decades. Overall, by 2022, U.S. domestic research and development, where we'll call it R&D, performance was estimated at $885.6 billion, encompassing contributions from businesses, government, higher education, and nonprofit organizations. Within the overall R&D funding, basic research funding occupies approximately 20 to 25%, and it has been relatively steady since 1997. Historically, the federal government was a predominant funder of basic research, contributing about 60% at the turn of the century. By 2022, the federal government share decreased to 40%, while the business sector's contribution rose to 37%, indicating a significant shift towards private sector involvement in basic research funding. The primary performer of these basic research in the United States are the top of the list is higher education institutions. So those are the people like Pania and me. So we are faculty members who are hired by these institutions, and we're the leading performers of basic research, accounting for approximately 48% of these activities, and then followed by business, and then federal government, and then followed by nonprofit organizations. So those are some basic numbers that we have collected about basic research that's been performed within the United States. Pania, can you give us an overview of where most academic research fundings are typically coming from?
Sure. Most of them, as you pointed out, are government agencies, and NIH, National Institute of Health, is number one, providing a lot of support for the health-related research and biomedical field. After that, as probably many of our listeners can guess, is the National Science Foundation, that they've been funding basic research across various disciplines and fields. And then after that, Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and NASA. But obviously, those are very mission-driven, and some of them might be more on the applied side rather than fundamental and basic sciences.
That's true. So NSF is probably what we call the fundamental research, and all the other ones are we call those mission-driven agencies. So they all have their very specific mission.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the time when I was at the DOE lab. Most of my fundings were coming through the Office of Basic Energy Sciences, which is basically promoting and funding fundamental sciences, but it was kind of modeled after National Science Foundation. So they were doing fundamental sciences within the Department of Energy for their mission, and DoD and the others also have those offices, but that doesn't cover the majority of their fund.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention in the last episode that where we talked about indirect cost. We mentioned that the top performer of these basic research are the professors in institutions. Around the turn of World War II, as the research funding had expanded over the years, the government thought it was an efficient way to perform research rather than just do research by the federal government, contract these out to spread out the work so that there's more output. Our infrastructure for research in the country developed to be the way we are today, where majority of the funding get contracted out and some are staying within the federal government and some goes into business. But of course, some of that are more applied research and may not be fundamental research. So Pania, what are other funding resources besides government funding?
Yeah, good question, Lucy. In United States, R&D sector relies also on industry support for doing research, and also academia relies on sponsorship from industry-funded grants and projects. So 25 to 30% of the research being done in United States is sponsored by industry. This means that many industries, they have their own research group or offices that people are conducting research. Academia also gets some contracts with industry, and that is very small portion. 5 to 7% of the research in academia relies on industry. Another source of funding for conducting research in United States are foundations. They are providing very small support. Many of our listeners are familiar with Gates Foundations and Moore and the others. If you are in academia, you can submit a proposal and get direct fund and fellowships and sponsorship with foundations. So they are usually supporting either applied research within their mission, or in some cases, some fundamental basic research is relevant to their goal and objectives.
So if I were to summarize, there are really three major pots that goes into supporting basic research for university faculty. The major one is coming from the federal government, and then followed by industry, and then the last one is foundation. So I think for the federal government piece, all of us are very familiar of, right? As we all know, that these budget could be cut for the upcoming year. So there had been some significant disruption in the source of these funds to support research, fundamental research. So I'm assuming it's going to impact PIs and institutions immediately. One that already happened, which is the indirect costs that we talked about last time. There are also impact on the PIs now that there are potentially less programs or less funding for us to apply. Do you know anything that's happening at your institution?
Yes, knock on the wood. I haven't been personally impacted or directly impacted by these cuts, but I know that, I guess, Harvard University put this list out that it shows the amount of the budget being cut from any institutions that they've been impacted, and University of Utah was also on the list. So I heard from people that they know PIs that lost their fundings. I don't know them personally, but university as a whole has been impacted.
Yeah, so for my institution, we definitely see less grants coming in. And it's in terms of the acceleration rate is getting high. I don't know how far this can go. I mean, ultimately it goes to zero, right? We do see a lot of continuing grants. We didn't have a lot of terminated grants, which is on the positive side. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that regard. But just kind of looking forward, PIs can continue to write, and how much that will actually become realized in terms of actually getting the grants, we don't really know. And we can hope that things will turn around at some point. So if we think that research ultimately at some point is going to come back, and it's going to, of course, take time to rebuild, and assume that everything's going to come back, we as PIs or as individual faculty, I don't think we want to stop, right? Because if we do stop, the whole way research has been functioning for the last 5-6 decades, if it's all shifting to some direction or another, then one day when it comes back, you don't have time to build back up instantly, right? So I'm assuming that we're all told, at least at my institution, you keep going. We tell all the PIs to keep going, and I keep going. Is that the same message coming from your institution?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, we keep hearing submit more, especially with the lowering the FNA rate, which we don't know if it will be finalized or not. And we had an intensive discussion about it in the previous episode. But what we've been hearing is yes, continue submitting and then write more grants. And that message has been really loud and clear. But when you want to submit, you need to go through your sponsored research. And then the message from them, it's been changing. In the last week or so, the university would not submit NSF because of their lower FNA rate. But I saw the announcement 2 days ago from NSF that they accept proposal with any rate. And then they said at the time of the negotiations, we will negotiate it, whatever the right rate is. So now we can submit NSF proposals, or the Office of Sponsored Research and Project would submit it. But I'm with you. I don't think that we should sit and watch and see what's happening and say, okay, I'll write proposal whenever everything is clear. I'm doing my job. I'll write them like normal. If they allow me submit it, I'll submit. If not, then they are ready for submission when the time comes. And I think that changing the habit and going back to the habit, as you mentioned, it's very difficult. And especially, I think that for early careers, I think that they should not relax at this moment. At least I know that it's difficult because there are so much uncertainty involved, but I think that I'm doing what I was doing before. And I think that we should all continue doing the same thing. And I'm hoping that hopefully sooner than later, we hear the whole dust comes down and we know which directions we are going. But I think that the shift has started, and I don't think that we are going back to where we were a couple of years ago. You mentioned in your data the basic sciences and the distribution of the fund from federal agencies is just getting lower in the past 5 years.
Yeah, so I mean, things are always changing and shifting and all that. And I think one thing universities will want to be resilient. You want to really build a resilient infrastructure, no matter whether it's education, research, or philanthropy. So you want to build and being able to adapt at any given point, because as we all know by now, things can become uncertainty in one day, and you can't predict the future.
Yeah. And you touched on an important item about the role of the administrations and their role in supporting PIs. Things are changing, but we also need strong administrations that they have these clear communications with us, and then also maybe get us involved in their decision-making process now even more than before. What do you see at your institutions? Have you been involved with those discussions?
For the School of Engineering, I mean, that's where I am. At least I feel like I can contribute. So we recently hosted a workshop called Diversifying Your Funding Portfolio. And yeah, so
Nice, good job.
I wanted to be like a workshop series, right? So I wanted to, for people, I wanted to go kind of a little bit deeper, working with institute in advancement. That's where the foundation kind of grants, where they handle that kind of thing, and work with Office of Strategic Alliance. That's to work with industry. That's a different office. So I wanted to actually start like a workshop series, go in depth and working with each office and have the faculty go in there and figure out this entire workflow. Because a lot of us are not so familiar with how foundation grants work or how to work with the industry. How do you build that kind of relationship and how do you start? And there a series of questions that a lot of us never navigated before. And long story short, it ended up being all of these offices, including the VPO research office, all joined and all kind of squeezed in one session. It still was very helpful to our faculty, just looking at there are other opportunities out there. So in terms of decision making, though, I don't even know where to start. I'm certainly not involved in the decision making. I'm not at that pay grade. And frankly, I'm not paid enough to worry about those things. So I do my part. And I also recommend all the PIs, most particularly junior faculty, do your part and just do it. Don't worry about anything else. And that's all you can do. And I think institution, I don't know who makes the decision. I never knew anyway. And I think that's even beyond our school level. I have no idea. They talk about things and they decide budget and strategies and all that. I think before all of these rapid changes happened, I was in strategic discussion meetings for different purposes, like research. How do we strategize to increase our research? And for institute advancement, I was in that part of that strategy discussion meetings as well. What can we do better? And marketing and outreach and all of those. So I think when things are in a predictable fashion, those strategy and all that is meaningful. And now we have a target for research funding. So there is a number that we try to reach.
Well, so
How do you
that's
accomplish that now?
yeah, exactly. But that's why I personally think this is not business as usual anymore. It's more important than before that the higher ups they get the bottom ups or whatever our title is to get us engaged in their decision making process, because before everything was routine, made the decision, they did this and that, and then we didn't need to be involved. But now we need to hear maybe somebody have a very creative, mind-blowing idea, so it's important that they get people involved. And a couple of days ago, I had some of these discussions with some junior faculty that they just started and they learn about, I don't know, NSF or NIH, and they haven't had time to explore anything but those. And now they were talking about that. Okay, so now we cannot submit to NSF, we cannot submit to NIH. I mean, this is when, before they changed the rule that we can submit. They were saying that, well, maybe we should just go have a GoFundMe page and then we ask the general public to fund me. And I thought, oh, is that even legal? Can we do that? So maybe, I don't know, maybe it is legal, because I looked and there is GoFundMe page for research. So maybe
Oh
we
my
can do
goodness.
that. I don't know if we need to get the money directly or it needs to go to university and university gets FNA on it, or what happens.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know that part.
Ultimately, this is just a job, right? I would not go out of that way to fund my own research. Forget it. But if I did, geez, if I spend all that time and my connections and my like human resources to raise all that money, I'm keeping that money. Nobody's charging FNA.
You charge FNA on yourself. It's
Yeah,
like
right.
yeah, but I think that everything, the landscape is so rapidly changing. So maybe universities say that now you have a business page on GoFundMe to get funding.
Yeah, maybe there will be some creative ways to do this, but like seriously, it's okay. I like research, but I don't like it that much to do all of this
Yes,
crazy.
we cannot go above and beyond and sell our soul and everything for funding.
It's just a job,
Yeah.
right? And let's not forget, there are also regional and state level fundings, sponsors. Those are, some of them are actually supporting fundamental research. And like Department of Transportation, for example, they are almost all state level fundings. And then they've been supporting civil engineers for the longest time. Just similar to stuff like that. Like New York State has a lot of those type of funding. And community-oriented research. I actually got a couple community-driven type of research, but it's very much applied. But their money, they have sponsors, and you have to report to the sponsors. You do have to have results and everything. But money is money.
And actually, I think that diversifying the research portfolio, it's also exciting because you learn about different side of the work that you've been doing rather than a bunch of equations or computational models that you and I are developing. We see impacts of our work. I also want to mention that in terms of institutions, probably many schools, including University of Utah, I know that they have branches in other countries. Like we have a University of Utah branch in South Korea. And this is a good opportunity for them to reach out to international agencies and international industry and other places outside United States, because all of these budget cuts are within United States. I'm sure that they have global impact too, but I think this is something that I haven't heard much from my administrations, but I haven't heard that how they are expanding their footprint in other countries and how they are creating these collaborations with other international collaborators. So I think that also PIs can establish these collaborations on their own. I know that there are some agencies in some countries that they also fund US researchers. So maybe that would be another possibility for us to diversify our research portfolio.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think in some ways, for sure, this right now is very uncertain, and it brings a lot of instability to our research for everybody. It will impact so many of us. I think we just need to build our resilience, like when we did during COVID. Like during COVID, we had to transition. We did it in terms of how we taught, how we teach, in terms of how we conduct daily lives, right? So we had to adapt so quickly. And I think we can do this. We know how to think, and we know how to make ourselves useful in many ways. And we can do a lot of, we can transition and we can pivot. That's the word that we used a lot during COVID. We can pivot, and we can use our, not necessarily knowledge, but skills that we have built up all these years. And we can just explore a little bit, be a little bit more adventurous, and be a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
And of course, you and I are saying this at a very privileged state, or because we're all tenured. I do want to emphasize that universities are all behind the junior faculty. They understand as well that we're all going through this situation. So just hang in there. and do the best you can, collaborate. This is the time to really, really be creative and collaborative, because there are resources that you may not be aware of. Just keep on talking to other people, branch out, and start building up your network. And this is like the best time to do it, because a lot of people don't have other things to do. So just start building that up.
I 100% agree. Thank you for sharing that, Lucy. Yeah.
All right, so we all know that the research landscape is shifting, but we remain hopeful that it will lead to positive changes. Now is the time to stay informed, support one another, and collectively rethink how we define a healthier, more sustainable research environment. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next time.